First of all, he's universal. Don't get his color mixed up with who he is. A lot of folk want to get hung up on his color. It really doesn't matter what color he is or he was. Let's focus on who he is. He is the Savior of the world. The Savior of the black folk, white folk, yellow folk, red folk, whatever nationality you might be. Jesus is the Savior of the world. He died for mankind. He died for all of us. He died that we might be free. A lot of people are hung up on his color. But don't let his color overtake his purpose and who he is. John here in our text is the writer. And he had little interest in human temptations. Have little interest in struggles or what you think about it from a human perspective. John writes specifically of a spiritual perspective. And he doesn't even focus on the agony that Jesus experienced. You may read in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, about the agonies of Jesus, but in John's writing, John doesn't focus on the agonies of Jesus. He doesn't focus on the agonies that he encountered. The Gospel moves more comfortably as he abandoned all attempt to prove that Jesus is the Messiah and the Son of God. In fact, when you get to John, John really doesn't feel like he needs to prove to you who Jesus is. Matthew proved to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. Mark proved to the Greeks, Mark proved to the Romans that Jesus was the Messiah. Luke proved to the Greeks that Jesus was the Messiah. But when John wrote about it, John said that by now you all believe who he is. I mean, even now, you all not need someone to prove to you that God is God, that Jesus is the Christ. You know, if you don't believe that God is God, don't brag about it, because I oftentimes say your arms are too short to box with God. If you believe in God, you don't have to brag, because whether you believe in him will help him be God. And if you don't believe in him, it won't diminish him from being God. He's God all by himself, whether you believe it or not. So John doesn't really try to prove to you that Jesus is the Messiah. He really writes and says in so many words, and epitomizes and says, by now you ought to believe it. There will not be no doubt in your mind that he is the Messiah. Are y'all with me? Jesus proved that Jesus as the incarnation of God, the Logos word made flesh. And we accept or reject this. You either accept it or you reject it. But nothing now needs to be proved as far as John is concerned. Are there anybody here that really want the Lord to prove to you that he is real? If you're saved, you'll be glad that you're saved. If you're not saved, then you'll try to get saved. If you're wrong, you'll try to get right. Can I get with you? John doesn't really try to prove to you, because Jesus has already proven himself. There's nothing that he has to do to prove to you that he's the Son of God. If you don't believe it now, then you're just going to be lost. You either accept it or you reject it. All through the Gospels, Jesus had told his disciples that he was coming to Jerusalem to die. He told his disciples he was coming to Jerusalem to die. If you read the word, there should be nothing that God has approved of you. You all know him right now. I mean, there's enough evidence in the Bible. There's enough evidence. You've heard enough testimony that he's real. I use this illustration all the time. If I told you, Deacon Wilson, I'm going to pick you up at the airport at 7 a.m. You didn't know me, you never seen me before. But I told you that I was going to be wearing a pink suit, some red shoes, and a blue hat. And I would have a dashiki on, and I would have a chain around my neck with an emblem the size of a dinner plate. You shouldn't have no problem recognizing me when you get on the plane. Come on, talk. Jesus told his disciples that I'm coming to Jerusalem specifically to die. He said, but I'm going to spend 3 days in the earth. Just as Jonah spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale. We talked about this on this past Wednesday night. And we know we follow traditions. A lot of us follow traditions, and sometimes I find myself following traditions too. But Jesus said he would stay in the earth 3 days and 3 nights. But tradition tells us that he died on Friday and rose on Sunday. Early. I have said it, I've said it because of tradition. But you ought to read chapter 12, Matthew chapter 12, verse 30. I'm sorry, Matthew chapter 12, verse 4. He said that he would be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Well, from Friday to Sunday is only a day and a half. Well, add it up. Add it up, that's only 1 day and a half. So where do you get this from that he died on Friday and rose on Sunday? The Bible did not say that. That's just tradition. It sounds good. It sounds good, but if you want to count, apparently he was crucified on Wednesday evening and count Wednesday up until Saturday, Sunday. Come on, Paul. You need to do some research. A lot of us hung up on he died on Friday. No, he didn't die on Friday. Because the Bible didn't say he died on Friday. He said he rose on the 3rd day. Are y'all with me? So it doesn't matter whether he died on Wednesday. What's wrong with him dying on Wednesday? The important thing is he got up on the 3rd day. That's what matters. He got up. And you know what? Even in the Sunday school lesson this morning, when the women told the disciples that Jesus had risen, they ran to the tomb. Now I wonder sometimes, why did they run to see? Jesus had already told them that he was going to rise. Well, if Jesus told you he was going to rise on the 3rd day, then you didn't have to run down to the tomb. You said you're going to say, well, I know he's not there because he said that he was going to rise on the 3rd day. But I've discovered some people know the truth, but they just don't want to accept the fact. A lot of people know the truth, but they won't believe it. They knew that Jesus had told them that he was going to rise on the 3rd day, but when the women told him that he is risen, they didn't believe it. They took off running. I got to go see for myself. If someone tell you they flying in Midway Airport to play and ride at 7:35, you know, you have to go stand out on the car pack with the car pack. You know what I'm talking about. Out on the runway. You don't have to run on the runway. Stand on the runway and see if he's coming. Just meet him at the baggage claim department because you believe he's coming in. My man told me that his mother-in-law came in at 8 o'clock the other morning, and he said he had to pick her up at the airport. He didn't have to stand outside to see if the plane gonna land. All he had to do was pick her up because he believed that she was gonna be on that 8 o'clock flight. Yeah. If Jesus was the Son of God, the disciples should not have to run. If you really believe that Jesus is the Son of God, then there should be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you believe that He has the power to save you from the penalty of sin, then you don't have to worry about it. You can say without a shadow of a doubt, when this life is over, I'm going somewhere. To spend with Jesus. When it's all over down here, I'm going to spend eternity with the Lord. Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions. And where I go, there ye may also. What's that we get about myself? These words were spoken by our Savior, Jesus the Christ. And he perhaps uttered these words because he wanted something to moisten his lips. Because in that 29th verse, they said that he thirsts. And when you read up above the 29th verse, but when you get to the 30th verse, they put some vinegar on a stomach and put it to his lips because Jesus wanted something to moisten his lips and his tongue, which had dried up because of the loss of body fluid. The last words were, it is finished. You know, he's hanging on the cross. It's hot. Sun beaming down on him. They had whipped him, put a crown of thorn on his head, spit it on him in the hot sun. And he said, I thirst. In other words, instead of them giving him some water, they still made mockery of him and gave him some vinegar. Thank you, Lord. Vinegar does not quench our thirst. But they still wanted to continue to torture him. And then after that, he said, it is finished. And in fact, the world's debt was paid. Every iota of the law had been fulfilled. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. Jesus did not die from his wound. He freely gave up his life. Don't think that he died because of the intent of his wound. Don't think that they should have taken it down and put it on a life support. No. He gave up. He didn't die from his wound. He voluntarily. Nobody. He even told Pilate, he said, no man. Jesus had to say one word. He stood before Pilate. And then when Pilate told him, said, listen, don't you know that I have the power to set you free?